This is Christina Barton. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about a lot of cultural stuff, monologuing quite a bit, things about abortion and pride stuff, and also this snippet from this interview with Shannon Sharp and Ray J. I was watching Ben's show, and he mentioned it. He's like, whoever Ray J is, or I'm like, okay. Well, he knew that he had a tape with Kim Kardashian, but Ray J mentioned how different the world would be if the tape didn't exist, and that it's had a negative impact. And I think that's very true. So anyway, lots of things to get to today. Before we jump into it, thank you guys for being here today. Anyway, I wasn't like in imminent danger yesterday, anything like that. The weather was bad, and it was just really, really loud, and I didn't know the power would go out, and I could hear like dogs going crazy, and I just didn't think it was I don't know, conducive to our conversation. So I was just like, I'm going to just table it today. But thank you to people who are concerned. I saw someone comment, was like, it's not the tornado, is it? And I'm like, I'm okay. I'm okay. We usually don't have things like that so much where I'm at, but it was pretty bad in some areas, and it rained pretty hard. It stopped not too long into the actual time the broadcast would have happened, but I didn't know how the weather was going to be. But here we are today together. So thank you for being here. Also, another interesting thing that happened yesterday, I finally sent out an email. So if you're not on my email list, please get on my email list. Go to blacktnews.com, go on the email list and join. But I don't know if this person found me because of my email list, because it did happen after I sent out an email. But right before my Bible study yesterday, I got a call from a bookstore that wanted to get some copies of my book. Of course, God is blatantly against abortion. So I was, ecstatic. So they're going to pick them up, I suppose. And if you're not familiar with that book, it is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. But yeah, I was thrilled. Every, writer, of course, we have such stuff that's available online, and so many people buy off of Amazon that it's not the end of the world if you can't get a bookstore or anything like that, obviously, because most sales are happening online. But it is cool. It is cool for someone to actually call you and say, we're interested in your book, we would like to carry it in our bookstore. So thank you very much, Fred. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. The congratulations. So I was elated. I was very happy about that. So it made me feel nice, and I want to share with you guys. But if you haven't read the book, don't know about the book, there's so many different things that people say about the Bible when it comes to abortion. And so many times I've seen people have debates about the topic, and they won't mention the Bible at all. And then people will say, well, let me ask you this. Are you religious? And the pro-life person will go, well, that doesn't have anything to do with that. That has nothing to do with my stance. And they're like, well, I was just curious. I was just curious because it just kind of seems like you believe that life has an inherent meaning, or people are inherently valuable. And it always goes that way. So I'm like, we might as well be able to explain our views, and because those people would also like take scriptures out of context. There's so many times I'd be on different lives and nobody's talking about religion, and people in the comments are writing, life starts at first breath, or they're mentioning the section in Numbers where they think an abortion happens, and other stuff like that. So I decided to break down a lot of those things anyway, and I still talk about philosophy and rights and other things like that, and just go through some of the common objections that I heard, like, well, God kills people. How come you can't kill people? I'm like, you want to rethink that, buddy? But God killed his kid. How come we can't kill our kids? Stuff like that. But some more kind of thoughtful objections that people have to I try to break it down the best way that I can, and even talk about how, um, I mean, the action itself is bad, but if you are a believer, it should be contrary to your nature to get to that point where you think that it's an acceptable thing to do. So I share that narrative as well. So I hope it's a blessing to people, and I hope they, enjoy it. And I'm very happy that that's available at the bookstore. So, or will be available at the bookstore. So if you have an indie bookstore or any bookstore out there, because you can, if you have a Barnes and Noble, you could just order it because I did print it from. I went through Amazon and also Barnes and Noble. So either you could do, if you have a Barnes and Noble, like you're a manager of Barnes and Noble or something, and you wanted to order them, or if you just want to pick it up at a Barnes and Noble, you can order it through the Barnes and Noble and go to the store and pick it up. So you can do that. Or you can just get off Amazon. Most people just get off Amazon. But anyway, thank you guys. You guys, if you want to support, you guys can go to blackteennews.com, check out different content on the website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website because it does cost a stream, run my website, all that stuff. So you guys can support. Again, I appreciate it. If you're watching on Facebook, you guys can, since ours on YouTube, you guys can do super chats. I do also read super chats as long as they're not gross or something like that. I'll read the super chats. So you guys can support that way. The best way to do it is to actually just go directly to the website. I mentioned that I do have a need. I would really like to get some cameras so I can do some, more fantastical sort of, not fantastical, but things outside of just, me talking to the webcam. Of course, people can shoot things with their phones, and actually the life stuff, like when I went to March for Life, I just used a cell phone, but there's other sort of events and things that would work better if I just had like a more traditional kind of camera. My other one kind of pooped out on me. So if you can support with that, there's a need. The Bible says you have not because you ask not. So I'm just throwing it out there. You never know who wants to help and who wants to support. So I'm just throwing it out there. Anyway, I think that's the end of my announcements. There is a fundraiser that a PAC that I'm working with is putting on for Fallen and Wounded Soldiers Fund. That date is, I don't remember the exact date, but it is, I'm going to a meeting for it tonight. I'll have some more material to talk about that more fully. It's also Men's Mental Health Month. Don't want to forget about that. And I'm trying to get something particular together to draw awareness, because not enough people out here care about the men. Just last month, everyone on TikTok, you scroll, it's like, I would choose a bear. I would choose a bear. Men suck. Men are dangerous. Men are this. I would choose a bear. I would rather a bear rip me apart or do this, blah, blah, blah. And someone just did a TikTok where it's just all these sounds of women talking about how much men are trash. And I'm like, and now it's Men's Mental Health Month. I wonder why. But anyway, it's so overshadowed with like Pride Month and other stuff like that. So I want to draw attention to it. So we will. So keep out on the lookout for that. And I think that is the end of my announcement. So let's get to talking. Okay, so yesterday, let me wipe my nose, pat my nose because it's a little warm. Last night, I got a call from my eldest sister, and disclaimer, she got a job with the Trump campaign. Do not worry, I am still very independent myself for my thoughts or whatever. So, but it's a good position that she's well qualified for. We're all very happy for her. And so last night she went to Mar-a-Lago, and it's funny because she worked for the RNC as the urban engagement director before, and also the director of women engagement. And in 2016, she worked at the Michigan Republican Party, and so did I. And she was over like 3 different counties as far as like the field operation. And her numbers were some of the best numbers in the country. I think she was like number 2 on like the call centers and stuff like that. She could manage people very well as far as ground game stuff. So again, she's very qualified for her position. And so she worked there in 2016, and I worked at the Michigan Republican Party. I did graphics and videos. I was a creative director, so she filled stuff, and I, was in an office making the best kind of content to share, which she shared with people last night. Like, I did a 50 reasons not to vote for Hillary Clinton video, and she showed people a video I did recently on TikTok that it got about 3 million views. So Big Sister was talking me up, which is great. Hopefully, I guess you'll see maybe Trump share some content one day, or somebody share some content, which be cool. And so she was just telling me, how surreal it was to be there in Mar-a-Lago. And the reason why it was surreal, not just because you're at a place like that, meeting the president, which that was the first time she actually got to meet him, and which we've been to the White House a few times, but that was the first. And I sang the national anthem at 3 rallies, I think, and I've never met him either, because he always shows up super late in the program. The anthem is like at the beginning of the programs, and then it's like an hour between break or something before he even comes up and starts doing his speech, and you can't just kind of sit in the back until he shows up. So I've still never met him, but she got to meet him yesterday, and she said everything was really good. And but anyway, she said it was surreal, and it's surreal because we just think about where we've come from in our lives. And I don't want to tell like too much of her business or anything like that, but there's plenty of things that we've shared that's out there, and I can tell you that things at times growing up got to the point where they were just really, really hard, especially like financially for the family. And when I was in high school, my sister, she was working as a security guard at GM plants, and my dad called her out and prophesied to her and stuff, and said, I see you with foreign dignitaries and traveling around the country and doing this and doing that. And my sister Angelina, who's the second youngest, she's just thinking to herself, like, how is Gina gonna do all that? She's a security guard. And that kind of stuff already came true, because was the job that she had at the RNC, but now she's got hired, and she's technically back to the RNC, but it was a Trump campaign that basically directed her on. So it's just really, really surreal. And besides the fact that I had this conversation with my sister last night, I thought about it today, and I'm talking to you about it right now, because a few hours ago, I was on TikTok, and I was having a conversation with someone who was just really going hard about abortion. They were on one of my videos, I think, about LGBT stuff, and they followed to another video and started debating about abortion. They were pro-abortion, and at one point they called me a sister in Christ, and I'm just like, I don't think we have the same daddy. You catch my drift. I think is it John 8:44? That's like your father is is Satan, father of lies. Like that's what went through my head, and I still have to do like a reply video to her. But she had all these like really bad interpretations of different scriptures to justify abortion. But then she also said things like, because I said, you think it's okay to commit violence against these human beings, and she's like, well, it's not violence if it's to save the mother's life, or if it's to save her future. And what does that even mean, the future? That's so broad or vague. And I said that saving one's life for abortion, that is so minuscule. Most people use abortion as like backup birth control. It's just the truth. And then she jumped to, well, if you have abortions, it'll help the economy. How do we jump from, and people do this all the time, we need abortions to save people's lives, to we need to have abortions to help our economy, because you don't want kids being raised in poverty. And so I replied something along the lines with, so you think we should unalive poor people, that they don't deserve to be protected from violence? And they doubled down and said, oh, well, you're just terrible because you don't you want people to grow up in poverty. And I said, well, I think it's pretty terrible of you saying that you think people like me people should be allowed to rip off our arms and legs and crush our skulls. And I think that was probably the last time they said anything. But you can see now why I brought up my sister's situation. Um, Things that were hard um, growing up. We had a lot of different. There were times when things were great, and there were times when things were really hard. There were times when we had refrigerators full of food. There was times when we had to accept the help of friends and family and so on. There were times when we got kicked out of our house. Well, there's two of those times, at least when I was alive anyway. And so to think that it would be best to spare someone, the seven of us, or seven kids and then my parents, that sort of life from poverty or those difficult times, that would have been better to off a couple of my siblings, and then that to think that people think that's justifiable is really disgusting. And it's very heartbreaking that someone who thinks that they're a believer in Christ would have that sort of mentality. But it's just disgusting that anyone would have that kind of mentality. And it blows my mind because I'm like, how can people say that with a straight face? Talking to people, not knowing their circumstance and their situation, basically saying that you don't have rights if you don't have a certain economic threshold. And, there's different metrics for how we rate who's in poverty or not, but so much about money is how you spend it, or wealth is your perception of it, your perspective of it. So there might be people getting abortions who say, I can't afford it. And they just mean they could afford it, but they just don't want that kind of maybe struggle, or maybe they don't want things to get a little uncomfortable, or maybe they just want their income to be more focused on themselves and they don't want to spend it toward a kid or something. It's not like, oh, if I don't have this abortion, I'm just going to be so destitute. But they make those justifications based on hypothetical sort of suffering. And to me, that doesn't make sense, because what happens when you know that there is suffering? Because you wouldn't say, let's say everything's hunky-dory, and then something happens, and all of a sudden you are poor and you have a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old. We as a society wouldn't say, oh yeah, you can off that kid. We wouldn't do that. We would either try to get that person some help, or frankly tell them to suck it up. But what you can't do is, again, tear their limbs off, crush their skull, suffocate them, or poison them, or starve them to death. You can't do that. Even if you didn't directly commit physical violence against them, even if you just neglect them, that you'd still go to jail. That's how we actually operate in this world. But let's say we were a society that was like, okay, if we know that you're suffering financially, it's totally okay if the parents decide to off you. So the day that I wanted to call home from school, because my parents were like, any day now the sheriff could come and just kick us out and throw our crap into the street. They didn't say crap, but throw our stuff into the street. So this is in my head. And I'm in school, and I wanted to use a phone to call home and just be like, hey, is everybody still there? And they wouldn't let me use the phone because they're like, if you can't tell me what you want to use the phone for, no, you can't use the phone to call home. And I didn't want to say, oh, I want to call home because I don't know if I have a home anymore. And so I just walked home crying. Now, hindsight, if no one was home, I'm sure someone would have picked me up. But I'm a kid, so if I'm walking home crying, and so this is a situation where I'm personally suffering here, and having this bit of trauma. Someone would say, "Gosh, it no one should have to suffer. Children shouldn't have to suffer. So we need to put them out of their misery." So as a society, would it be acceptable if while we were sleeping, my parents, like, I don't know, did something with a gas or propane, whatever, and we just didn't wake up? Would that be acceptable in the society where suffering is a death penalty? It's worthy of death. Because if that's how society functioned, we wouldn't get to the point where my sister, the former security guard, gets to go to Mar-a-Lago and dine with the president. We don't get there ever. If we just get to decide, oh, you're in this spot in life where things are bad, so let's destroy all potential futures for you. It doesn't make any sense. So if it doesn't make sense to do that at a time where where I face suffering, to end my possible futures, why would it make sense to do that to me when I'm in my mother's womb? Because I can tell you, there's no amount of money in this world that I'd be like, oh yeah, cool, totally off my siblings. Make things a little more comfortable. Make the Christmases a little more better with that I would get more toys or something and have less people to play with. And I'm an introvert, so I don't be playing anyway, really. But we did play video games together, though. You know, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. So these sort of justifications that people have are just really maddening. It's really, really maddening, really disturbing. So again, if we're just like, oh, they could potentially suffer. They got a lot of kids. They might as well just, start a couple of them, make things more comfortable for the sake of the economy. You don't know what someone's life can bring, where they can be. Life is not linear. I've said this many times. I've written in articles, I've written in posts, I've written in my book. Life isn't linear. There are ups and there are downs. And you can think you're secure one day and lose it all. And you can have nothing and then your life transforms completely and totally. Especially in the age of today, where you could go viral on TikTok and then have like thousands of dollars in your account or something. Or get some kind of fame because someone shared the right video or retweeted the right thing. There are people who gave money to a GoFundMe because they said, I just really would like a PS5, and people just started donating. A news story about you could go viral and people want to donate and give and help. You don't know what your life will bring. So the idea that people think that possible suffering or even current suffering is worthy to just end someone's life. And it's not even someone taking their own life, which still is wrong, but feeling that you have the right to end someone else's life is crazy and deeply immoral. So it's so bizarre when people say that with their full chest. With their full chest. That I don't deserve to be protected from violence. So, I'm glad my sister had a nice time in Mar-a-Lago. she she talked about how beautiful the ballroom was. It made her want to have a really big wedding. And she's never been that person. She's always been like, I could just elope. Eh. And then she saw the ballroom was like, she told Lynn Pat, and she's like, I want to get married here. So I can't tell too much of her business or anything like that, but again, you just don't know what your life will bring and where it will take you. So there's my 2 cents about that topic. Just people who advocate for abortion, just like get better reasons, man, because that's not a good one. It's not a good one in the least bit. Not in the least bit. Another thing I would like to address. Told you there's gonna be a lot of monologuing today. And I've had some viral videos go on TikTok or whatever lately. And one of them, it's not super viral, but it's about like almost 400,000 views or so now. But Miss Rachel, who is a YouTube darling in the kids space, she's upset some moms and dads, families, especially conservative sphere Christians, because one, recently people have been talking about a comment that she made about a year ago, inviting Dylan Mulvaney on to sing on the show. People are like, well, that's wrong. We don't want that kind of person who makes a caricature of women and has done a lot of problematic things to be exposed to our children, be exposed to them. It is to show good judgment that you would even say that. And she also did like a happy pride thing in the midst of this happy pride month. So she said, if for those of you who don't want to follow me because of this, that's okay. I don't do this for views or whatever and money. And of course she does it for views because that's why she's posting the videos, but she wants somebody to see it, right? She didn't write it in her diary. Happy Pride Month, dear diary. She didn't do that. She posted a video. And so anyway, I did a video because after she got backlash from that video, she talked about her faith. And she said, Lord told us to love every neighbor, love your neighbor as yourself. And so she said, God gave the greatest commandment is to love God and love your neighbor. And I'm like, no, those are two different commandments. Love God is first, and then it's love your neighbor. And love, the Bible talks about, one of the things that love is described as is that it doesn't rejoice in wrongdoing. So I would argue that if you are helping to guide someone on a path that is contrary to what God would want for them, according to the Bible that she quoted, then I would argue that's not actually very loving. And we should what did I say? We should love people out of hell, not cradle them into it. That's what I said. So someone said most people really liked the commentary, really liked my breakdown of it. But of course, there are people who were opposed, say things like, oh, there's no hate like Christian love, and which I think is true, because we as Christians have an objective morality. And if you don't believe in God, maybe you do believe in objective morality, but most people I hear where atheists, at least conversations that I've had, they believe it's some kind of subjective morality. But so if it's subjective, that means it's all just kind of based off of opinion. And there are people out there who could argue that it's not wrong to sexually assault people, the Holocaust isn't wrong, like objectively wrong, etc. So if Christians can say, no, there's an objective moral standard, and it's wrong, and we hate evil. Yes, I would say there's no hate like Christian love, because we have the proper perspective on what we should hate and how we should love. So that's, a way I want to tear down that particular talking point. But someone said it doesn't affect anyone. And like if people are trans, if people are whatever. And so that's what I want to talk about, because I think that's cap. Like a lot of the stuff going on in today, like you can argue that people should be able to do whatever they want, but this idea that people just live in an echo chamber and there's no sort of blast radius for this sort of uh decisions that you make, whether they're good or bad, that they don't impact everyone else, even a stranger, is cap. Like it doesn't, it's not true. Like people say that all the time with abortion, like, oh, if a woman has an abortion, it doesn't impact you, it doesn't affect you. I've written an article about the societal harms of abortion, and the kind of society that we are creating in order to keep something like that going. Like people would argue, I had an ethics professor tell me, there's a woman named Remy Lee. She had a boyfriend that gave her his dad was a doctor. He gave her some drugs that she thought were like prenatal or whatever, but it was really meant to cause an abortion. And so he ended up getting charged, and she was like in the first trimester. So I asked him, was that murder? And he said no. So we live in a society where if your child is in the womb and you want, even if you want them, people, that's still not a person. And if something happens to them, then that's still not murder. There was a case, I forget what state it was in, but they people were fighting to be able to, the baby was like really really late, and it's like it was like 38 weeks or something, and the mother, there's a drunk driver I think that hit her, and so they just wanted the baby to be acknowledged so there could be some kind of punishment for killing her child. And the pro choice groups were like, nah, we can't do that. We can't say that human beings are persons. Even like with the Scott Peterson case, the pro abortion crowd were arguing, no, we don't want to say even that Lacey's baby was, that was murder. That's, we're getting really close to saying that babies are people, and we cannot have that. So if you look at how we're building society in order to sustain this, yes, women can have abortions anytime, any place, anywhere. That is a really big blast radius. And then there's the fact that people want you to pay for the abortions, shout the abortions, celebrate the abortions, all this kind of stuff. There's lots of things that I could say about it, but yes, it affects people. And so again, you can feel however you want to feel about the LGBT stuff, and but to have the opinion that it doesn't affect anyone, it just isn't true. Now there are people who like just literally legitimately just wanted to be with who they wanted to be with and maybe get married and not have complications when they go to the hospital to visit their loved one. There are absolutely people like that, but I would say that the LGBT mafia at large, they didn't just want liberty, they wanted political legitimacy, and that also requires some societal normacy and societal buy-in. And that does obviously require people, like I said, to have buy-in. So that does obviously affect people. It definitely affects people, like Jack Phillips, who is the cake maker, who didn't want to bake a cake for a wedding for a gay couple, and they got him with other stuff. And so he's been in court for years. That's just one example of obviously it impacting more people than what you think. But I want to go back in time for a little bit. So if we go back in time to 2008, when there was a campaign in California to get rid of gay marriage, to vote yes to ban it, I was very surprised that thing passed. Very, very surprised. And minorities were like, we don't want that, especially Black people. Like, we don't want they were like, nope. And but really, you obviously had crossover because Democrats obviously outnumber Republicans in California, even back in 2008. Yeah. But the big issue, the big deal though, why a lot of people decided to vote against gay marriage is because the Yes campaign that wanted to ban it were playing particular ads and had a particular narrative. So I'm going to show you the commercial and I will tell you what people were saying back in the day about this commercial. Okay?
Mom, guess what I learned in school today?
What, sweetie?
I learned how a prince married a prince, and I can marry a princess.
Think it can happen? It's already happened. When Massachusetts legalized gay marriage, schools began teaching second graders that boys can marry boys. The courts ruled parents had no right to object.
Under California law, public schools instruct kids about marriage. Teaching children about gay marriage will happen here unless we pass Proposition 8. Yes on 8.
So, that was the commercial. And now you might say, well, people should teach them about gay marriage. That's not really the point, guys. The point is actually that when that commercial and stuff aired, and when they were trying to get this gay marriage ban passed, the No campaign was going around saying that's not true. That is absolutely not true. If gay marriage passes, it would have no effect on education. And NPR wrote about it. So the spokesperson Kate Kendall was like, it will have no impact. So that's what they were saying, that it was just untruthful. It's that slippery slope fallacy with those darn Christians and So they were saying it's just propaganda. Of course, it's not going to impact what goes in the schools. That's a lie. So that was 2008. We of course live in 2024. And we recall that in the Obama administration during that time, the Supreme Court voted for Obergefell, I think is how you pronounce it. And that made gay marriage available across the country. And so we absolutely know that it's in the schools. Not only is it in the schools, there are schools who don't even want parents to be able to opt out of it. And sex education is not even just when I went to school, it was like 4th grade, 5th grade, they would start on like some stuff and carry it into like health class and like do sections or whatever. They wanted it available, teaching different stuff from K through 12. And of course it's in the schools. And not only is it in the schools, the Guttmacher Institute wrote about how you need sex education in schools because one of the main reasons is because they want to be able to make people feel comfortable who are gay about gay sex. And they don't want to have them feel left out and stuff. So they want to normalize sex in the schools and the people's perceptions of sex and how, people have it who don't biologically create children. So of course it's in the schools. So people who were like, oh, I just, you guys, that's cool if you want to get married and again get some same legal rights that other people have, and that's fine, but I just, I don't want it to impact my kids and my morality and what I'm teaching them, and I don't want it all up in my face and other stuff like that. And people were like, okay, sure, that's what we want too. At least that was kind of what the campaign was talking about. And the reality is that no, they wanted everyone to comply, accept, confirm, affirm, and that's we're not at a point where we're having Pride Month and all these companies have it everywhere and so on. And if you don't agree with it, then you're just a bad person, you're a bigot, and so on. So again, I'm bringing all this up because people have this perception of it doesn't affect you what people do. And the truth is that much of this activism is focused on it having everything to do with you, for you being a participant into legitimizing um, what other people want for their societal goals and their political goals. So it's in the schools. We're at the point where parents are fighting to get pornographic material out of the schools. This book is gay, genderqueer. And I have a video that I did. I'm going to go ahead and play it. I made this during the election, the midterm election, and Governor Gretchen Whitmer was trying to pretend like this book is gay, and other stuff that they were showing wasn't, you know, wasn't bad or anything like that, and tried to just kind of push it off. So there's stuff in here that show from the book, but it's blurred out. But let's go ahead and just watch it, just to remind people of their sort of narrative versus what's actually going on.
What I've heard from parents across the state is inappropriate content in school libraries. We're talking about pornography. They've asked Gretchen Whitmer to comment, and she's been silent.
I know that we have rights to understand the curriculum.
Gender normative, gender fluid, gender neutral, and gender non-binary.
The materials.
I finally gave in and ordered a binder for myself.
Opt our children out if we think that it doesn't keep in line with our desires in terms of what they are learning.
Our curriculum is deeply using critical race theory.
Also, parents can attend parent-teacher conferences, take part in the debate that is happening, and these are happening at the local level, where they should be, so that parents can be involved. We also have a duty to make sure that all children feel accepted and safe.
How is liability affected if a student dies by suicide?
And can learn and play when they are in school.
A drag queen for every school. That is what would be fun for kids and lift them up when they are having emotional issues.
I reject the false choice that it has to be one or the other. But I'll also tell you this, is with a really heavy heart that I see politicians try to wedge communities against one another. It is dangerous and it is selfish.
Instead of you guys taking the 6 books out, we wouldn't even be here.
They're sexually explicit. They're pornographic, they're disgusting. I'm disgusted just looking at them, let alone read them.
This is an issue about decency. Focus on the issues.
We've received the answer now that she is not going to stand with parents on this issue.
Governor, do you really think books are more dangerous than guns? Like, do you really think that books pose a greater danger to our kids than gun violence does? Mrs. Dixon is trying to distract us. She's trying to divert attention from the fact that she's bankrolled by Betsy DeVos. She has endorsed Betsy DeVos's plan to drain $500 million out of our public schools, and that's why she's waging these fights. We have to protect our kids.
Yeah, I can't believe this woman is still the governor and Dana Nessel is still the attorney general. It's so crazy. Oh my gosh. A drag queen for every school. And Dana Nessel, when Hamtramck decided that they would vote and they'd have a neutral policy as far as the flags that they would fly, like you could still fly a pride flag on your own property, but you can't fly a pride flag on the city property. It's only going to be like the US flag, the state flag, and other stuff like that. There's like 5 different flags that they approved. You can't have just like, we're going to fly a Muslim flag today or a pirate flag today. Like, no, we're just going to keep it neutral. And people got all upset. There's all these liberals, people like, why you bring racism? Most of them were white liberals. When I saw the protest guys came in, there was these 2 lesbians who like kissed in front of this city council of Muslims, like everyone's Muslim, and to prove their point, sock it to them, I guess. And you had Dana Nessel, who ended up coming out to Hamtramck to give a little speech saying that when you have neutral policies, it's not really fair because people who are disadvantaged or minorities, you know, it disadvantages them. when people are so used to being treated like they're special, when they're treated the same, they feel like that's an injustice. So that's basically what was going on. So they were so mad because they couldn't fly their pride flag on the city property. So this idea that it doesn't affect other people, that's just not true. I already mentioned Jack Phillips. He was in court for a while. There's other people, florists and people who owned hotels, like different bed and breakfast type places or different venues, or maybe they didn't want to service a gay wedding where they couldn't do that. And people were so mad about the 303 creative case that came down from the Supreme Court that was like, okay, this isn't even about just religious liberty. It's about the First Amendment, period. And they're like, oh, this is so unfair. Why is it unfair that you can't force people to comply to your beliefs? Like if someone said, I would like you to bake cakes for my gay conversion therapy camp, and you're a gay baker and you don't want to do that, why is it wrong that the government said, that the Supreme Court said, hey, you don't have to be forced to do that? Why is that wrong? Because you want to force other people to do this for you. And if you couldn't see some of that stuff that was flashing really quick on screen with that video, there was a section in that book about how to talk to Muslims about homosexuality being right. So there was a section itself about targeting Muslims. There was a section that taught people how to go on an app to find the nearest homosexuals. For what? Why would you want kids to know that? Why would you encourage kids to do that, to meet strangers on apps? Very weird, very strange, but those are the sort of books that parents don't want in schools. And people like Gretchen Whitmer and Biden and Chelsea Clinton and other folks are pretending things like genderqueer and whatever aren't gross. And if you complain about it, then people say, why are you attacking the homosexuals? And it's like, we just want the bad books gone. Why is it an attack on the homosexuals? And then you get groups like Gays Against Groomers that are like, no, they're all right. We need to get rid of this stuff, protect the innocence of children. And then those groups are social pariahs. And then they'll start censoring them on TikTok or different places where they sell t-shirts. They can't do that anymore. They want them all shut down for saying, hey, we need to protect the innocence of children. They think that group is far too problematic for saying anything. So you can't even have like reasonable people who happen to like people of the same sex. It's like, no, the whole mafia has to be, let's run off this perversion cliff together. So the whole idea of it doesn't affect people, that's just cap. And then it got to this place where they're teaching gender identity stuff in school. Do you guys remember the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida? That's not what it was called. It's called the Parental Rights and Education Bill. And it said that you can't teach sexual orientation. It didn't say gay stuff. It just said sexual orientation or gender identity in grades like K through 3. And I thought it should went far enough. And then also you couldn't like keep information from parents about like the kids' mental health. And it was only like 6 pages long, and there were so many lies about it. And Disney got involved, and you had different writers crying about how Disney needed to stand up and do something, and Disney stood up and did something. So Ron DeSantis decided to smack Disney around, and that was a fight that they really shouldn't have picked, but so many people lied about it. Why? Because they want this stuff in your kids' school. There are clubs like LGBT clubs where they hide. It was just in California where they were hiding from the parents what they were doing in these clubs. They would look at different things that maybe kids had in their rooms or the walls while they were doing in-person learning and being like, okay, maybe we can invite them into our club. And then they would have these official lists where they're supposed to sign. And they're like, don't sign these lists, because if you sign these lists, then we have to show them to your parents or let them know that you're part of the club. And if you don't, then we can be like, I don't know where they are. And then there were teachers who were saying that they were teaching other teachers how to have those clubs in areas where there were conservative schools. So again, there's a blast radius to this sort of stuff, because it's not about just personal liberty. And again, I think for people like Gays Against Groomers and stuff, I think it is mostly maybe about personal liberty, but the mafia at large, it is about political power and influence and societal affirmation. And that does obviously include other people. There are parents who have lost custody of their children because they would not affirm their identities. They wouldn't accept a lie that there was something wrong with their child's body, and they haven't seen them. If they're lucky to still be alive, there are cases. Abigail Martinez, she lost custody of her daughter, who ended up ending her life by stepping in front of a train. So we can decide as a society to do whatever we would like, to pass whatever we would like. We can. But there is a blast radius to whatever decisions we make that are positive or negative. And it's just the truth. It's just the truth. So I think there's a lot of consequences to overall redefining marriage. And I if people coming together to make some kind of social contract, so again, you can go to the hospital and they don't give you a hard time when you go visit a loved one, and you can do stuff for the purpose of your taxes and other stuff like that. We could do that. But disassociating marriage from it being something that's supposed to be a healthy place for the family, like a construct of the family, we've, I think, lost something by disassociating sex from family and disassociating marriage from family building, especially like in a traditional sense. So I'm going to play this video that from this debate with Alan Keyes and Obama to lay it out again.
Mr. Keyes, on the Channel 7 debate last Thursday night, you said, and I'm quoting you, where procreation is in principle impossible, marriage is irrelevant. You went on to say it was irrelevant and not needed. What about marriage between people who are well beyond their childbearing age? Irrelevant, not needed?
No, it's simply a misunderstanding. The word in principle means relating to the definition of, not relating to particular circumstances. So if an apple has a worm in it, the worm is not part of the definition of the apple. It doesn't change what the apple is in principle. So the fact...
It retains its appleness.
If it retains... It retains... To act as if concepts are laughable means that you want to be irrational. Human beings reason...
You said it was irrelevant and not needed.
Human beings reason by means of concepts and definition. We also make laws by means of definitions. And if you don't know how to operate with respect for those definitions, you can't make the law. An individual who is impotent or another who is infertile does not change the definition of marriage in principle. Because between a man and a woman, in principle, procreation is always possible. And it is that possibility which gave rise to the institution of marriage in the first place. As a matter of law, as a matter of law
possible
and
in principle.
But when it is impossible, as between two males or two females, you're talking about something that's not just incidentally impossible, it's impossible in principle. And that means that if you say that that's a marriage, you are saying marriage can be understood in principle apart from procreation. You have changed its definition in such a way as, in fact, to destroy the necessity for the institution. Since the only reason it has existed in human societies and civilizations was to regulate, from a social point of view, the obligations and responsibilities attendant upon procreation. So when you start playing games in this way, you are actually acting as if the institution has no basis independent of your own art.
Look how young Obama used to be. Yeah, it's a good breakdown of the situation, but I bring this up because, again, you had we're not going to teach it in schools if it's legal. Like the Christians are crazy, blah, 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 blah. And now we're at the point today where there's a gay couple in New York who are suing the state because they believe that the state should be paying for their IVF and their womb rental of a child that they will create and then give them a motherless life. They're suing because they'll cover for IVF or whatever for women, for couples that can procreate in principle, but there's some kind of issue there with fertility. So something is unhealthy, so insurance will cover that, but they believe that the insurance should cover them, even though in principle they cannot procreate. So nothing is wrong with them. They just in principle cannot do what men and women were created to do. But they're suing the state to pay for their access to IVF in a woman's womb. And that's where we are. That's where we are. So I'm, again, you can feel however you want to feel about these issues. You can say, Kristen, you're going too far with this topic today. My entire argument today is when people say these things just don't impact anyone else, that it is just the private thing between two people, and it doesn't matter to you at all. It's just not true. So I just want to just kind of break that delusion down, that we exist independently of one another as opposed to us interacting with each other in a society, and the decisions that we make socially, culturally, politically, obviously impact one another. Because I'm not too fond of a situation happening and all of a sudden we're like, well, what about our religious liberty? Then AOC gets on the House of the floor like, I'm so sick of hearing about religious liberty. We only bring it up when we want to discriminate. And just flailing her arms like, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. I don't have the clip pulled up for you guys, but that's what she kept doing. I'm tired of it. Well, maybe we're tired of having to remind people that we have First Amendment rights, man. Maybe we're tired. But anyway, that's even like, you guys remember I'm looking over like an article that I wrote some time ago. When the girl who was on Full House, who is in all the Lifetime movies, she said something about the new network that they're doing, that they wouldn't have like gay couples or whatever on it, and people were so mad at her. And then Hillary Burton, who was on One Tree Hill, was coming at her, and they just think they're oh so hateful and whatever. I wish the issue was just about liberty and it wasn't about, again, all these other stuff. But it again, there's a blast radius. So just however you feel about it, just stop lying to me. Just stop lying to me. However you feel about abortion. I brought this up at the beginning of the conversation. You can support it if you want to. It should be banned. You shouldn't be allowed to do it. And I'll keep fighting to make that happen. But don't lie to me about it doesn't affect anyone. No, there's severe societal harm for allowing it. And I can break that down. I already did a little bit, so I'm not going to go back over it again. But don't lie to me. Just don't do it. Speaking of different social ramifications, Ray J was on Club Shay Shay. And I'm pretty sure when I play this, YouTube will eventually ding me for copyright. But I'm going to play it anyway because I don't think they'll stop my live stream. And he was asked about the tape with him and Ray J is a singer, and he's the one who had the tape with Khloe Kardashian. This, the inappropriate tape that really blew her up and so on. And her mom, their family learned to really capitalize off of this moment. So Ray J was asked about it, and he acknowledged how much culturally would be different if that had never happened.
How different is that family, or that family life?
I think more of the question is, how different would we all be? How different would this whole fucking thing be? How different would the industry be? How different would the wheel roll? Everything would be different. We would all be different. All of us. Everybody in here would be different. We would have on different clothes.
What you mean?
Everything would be different, meaning like you would never ask me that question. Meaning if we sat here right now and we got to this point, I don't know, probably more people would be going to college and, you know what I'm saying, getting an education to be successful. There might not be any OnlyFans and other things like that, other opportunities like that. So, I mean, are we a part of the cure? Are we a part of the disease? I don't fucking know. All I know is I'm just trying to make it right.
Were you ever embarrassed when the tape came out?
Yeah. I have kids now, so when I have kids,
and
everything that we did now when I have kids is totally different. The whole thing is wacky. Before I was just like, but with my kids, it's not okay. And so I can't, without me going too far into it, without me getting in trouble. Yeah, I mean, nah, it's not okay now. But I'm 43 with a kid that's 4 and a kid that's 6. My daughter's 6, my son's 4. And even though you're young, and even in that young kid world, they'll all probably think it's fucking cool.
Yeah.
Until you have kids.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting. He's like, would there even be OnlyFans? Would there be this? Would there be that? And the Kardashians have been everywhere for a long time. They've had their show for a long time. They've impacted the culture for a long time. And having something like this, that sex tape going so viral and making careers and so on. If that didn't happen, if they had made different decisions, would our world be better? I mean, overall, that would be a good thing. But was it such a shockwave? It was a massive shockwave. But to the extent that he's, admitting that it damaged the culture, it damaged the world, is pretty fascinating. And acknowledging that having children puts a different perspective on your life. Like there's people who talk to like these OnlyFans people and they're just like, what's going to happen when you have kids? And they're like, oh, they're going to think it's cool or whatever. Or like, are they going to think it's cool when other people are teasing them at school about their mom being a whore? There's consequences to this stuff. And eventually, now there's some people who just, decide to just within themselves that they're just not going to feel shame about what they do. But many parents, they're just like, man, I wish I would have made different decisions. I definitely want my kids to make different decisions. And it's one thing when maybe like you smoke pot in college or something, and maybe that comes up in a conversation. But when you have a really famous sex tape out there and your kids will undoubtedly know about it one day, or if they don't know now, that's a pretty massive thing to weigh on you, to weigh on your chest. But something that is interesting about the kids creating a different perspective with what he did in the past makes you realize how important it is for people to have children, and how having a child and many children or so on will radically transform your life, and maybe you have less things around and or whatever. Maybe you have less disposable income and whatnot. Maybe things will be tough, maybe things will be a little hard, but nothing matures you like having to care for another human being. There was an article that came out after Texas passed their heartbeat bill, and so I can't remember who wrote it. I wrote about this in my book, but maybe it was the Washington Post, but I don't know, the pro-choice crowd was kind of looking at the article, reading the article like, oh, it's so terrible that this woman had to, she wanted an abortion, she couldn't have an abortion, and now things are a little hard for her or whatever. And she can't fulfill her dream of maybe one day being able to go visit the ocean or something. And all the pro-life people are like, oh my gosh, isn't this wonderful? She has children that she loves, and her boyfriend, who was, working at a fast food place, has a life plan, and he's joining the military, and they're going to get their stuff together. And, we're looking at it positive. And she's like, I think women should be able to choose, but if I had chosen, I wouldn't have these kids that I love. So, it was funny what people were choosing to take away from the article, but, well, obviously a positive thing is they had to get their lives together because they had a social responsibility for these children that they procreated. And adults living life as if those individuals don't matter and that we don't have a social responsibility is obviously wrong. But there's many people, maybe they're like, I have a friend, her life had gotten pretty bad, and she had made a lot of really bad decisions, and she decided to start, straighten herself up, stop fooling around with, the wrong people. And, because she had someone else to care for. And she will say that her son saved her life. And she has a very lovely family. Very lovely family. But children can save your life. And the children depend on you. And that's why you need to get it together so you can save their life. Now, there's people who don't seem to be able to get it together, and they maybe will give them up for adoption or a family member or whatever to help them out, to take care of them. You do what you have to do. But I think it's interesting that something that he wasn't so ashamed about, and something that, maybe he tried to mask the shame with more vulgarity, like you saw the gesture he made in the video. But now he has to look at life differently because he has people that he loves that are in his life, and he has to protect their innocence and raise them in a proper sort of social fabric. But he's already damaged it himself to such a high degree. One thing I like to say about my parents is that, particularly my mom, but both my parents, is that they practice proactive love, that they made good decisions for my life before I was even, a twinkle in their eyes. My parents were both virgins when they got married. They waited and married good people who would be a good wife, a good husband, and had the right kind of values. And even though I already told you guys earlier that there were times when we really felt on hard times, these sort of struggles that people have out there in the world, or what I didn't have to face a lot of things that people have, seeing, in broken homes. So maybe things were tight financially sometimes, but I definitely didn't have a broken home, and we lived in unity, and a lot of great ethics and morals that you find in the Bible we applied in our lives, and we're able to live peaceably. And we still, live peaceably and talk all the time and go to church together. And if we, for those of us who don't live in the same house, we're talking in group chat, we're calling each other on the phone. And so we have a very tight relationship. So I know I'm very blessed. And but I owe much of that to the Lord and the leading of the Lord and his word. And a lot of people just want to ignore a silly spaghetti monster nonsense. There's a good book on how to live a more abundant life. I recommend people follow it. I recommend people follow it. So people need to start having kids and desiring to build a better world for them, man, and to build a better social fabric, and then not use them as tools for virtue. I think that's what we see a lot with these parents who are transing their kids, but we need to protect them and allow our children to make us better people, because they need us to be. Anyway, that's all I want to say about that snippet. So we are over on time. Last thing I want to go back to the other segment because I forgot to mention how much all this stuff, social engineering, is in the different TV shows. It just shows for even children, and Disney shows and Cartoon Network, and just it's everywhere. So again, it's not something that just is an individual thing that's meant to impact everybody. There's different propaganda books that for the LGBT mafia, and they are propaganda books written by propagandists. One called Moving the Ball that talks about how to re-engineer society and their goal with that. So it was never meant to be something that was just private. So anyway, thank you guys. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. One article that I've just been scrolling through that has some of the things I showed you guys today. An article, Should Conservatives Concede the Gay Marriage Debate? So that's on my website. It's if you want to find it, the best way is probably to type in Black Teen News, and then if you type in, I guess, gay marriage, then with my website you'll be able to find it instead of having to go way back in the archive. But that has some sources to some of the things that I showed you guys, including that video I showed with Gretchen Whitmer, and I still can't believe she's still the governor. And her one thing, but man, Dana Nessel still being there is wackadoodle bonkers. Wackadoodle bonkers. My state, man. It's going to be the next California if we don't do something. But you guys can go to the website, check out different content there. You guys can check out different books, and you guys can check out different merch that we have available on the website, like these cool goat hoodies and goat t-shirts that's available. And I'm sorry, the Denounce White Supremacy, Defeat Joe Biden, with a list of his racist stuff on the back, or I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For shirt, all kinds of different stuff. The I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For shirt, obviously it looks like a Star Wars shirt, but I made this after the Gina Carano situation. And Gina Carano, Disney, of course, like lied on her, defamed her for the reason why they decided to let go of her. But before they publicly let go of her for some kind of posts that reference how people were treated leading up to the Holocaust, she upset the LGBT mafia because they're really pressuring celebrities to write in their pronouns or whatever. And so she wrote beep bop boop, like some Star Wars noises and stuff. So people were really mad. So Disney really wanted her to apologize, and she didn't want to apologize in the way that they wanted her to apologize. Like, she would really wanted to explain herself. And so they wanted her to get on some kind of call with like 40 LGBT people or something ridiculous like that. And she's like, okay, how about I just take a couple of people out to dinner and they can look into my eyes, I can look into their eyes, and we can have like a real conversation. And Disney didn't want to do that. And that was basically the end of their communication until Lucasfilm or a representative or somebody tweeted out that she was no longer with them. So pretty crazy story. Pretty crazy story. So anyway, that's another thing that we have at blacktnews.com. You guys can check out and get. And anyway, I'll see you guys tomorrow. And it'll be my last broadcast before I turn 35. So Monday is my birthday, just FYI. God bless you.